The Tramway de l'Est is a long-awaited light rail project for East Montreal. It's been given the green light, announced by Transport Minister Jean-Pierre Guilbeault. 38 kilometers, 31 stations. It will connect with the blue and green metro lines. Set to begin by 2027. I know timelines are sometimes murky on these projects. It'll offer a faster commute, a 45-minute trip from the eastern parts of Montreal all the way to downtown. Now, our next guest is someone that covers and studies public transit around the world, whether it's happening in New York City or in Texas or in China or in Spain. Hayden Clarkin knows something about it, and it's our pleasure to welcome Hayden back onto the program to talk about this program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Elias. I appreciate it.
Listen, it's great to talk to you, and so I just on what you've looked at here. First things first, a tramway. There are a lot of different options, right? The below-ground subway, a tramway, all of these things. Where do you view that as a tramway as a solution for cities like Montreal?
You ever had the hankering for ice cream and then your parents tell you, well, we could get you a cookie instead, but you really wanted the ice cream, but you're okay with the cookie, but you really wanted the ice cream? It's kind of how I feel about this project. So if you know, the REM project, which kicked off, I think about a year or two ago, has been wildly successful. And that would have been the same technology to Eastern. Oh, I'm sorry.
Except in the snow. I just want to point out, Hayden, it has been, the last month has been a rough month for the REM, but point taken.
No, 100%. And that is an issue with like Ottawa has seen the same thing with like winterizing a lot of their electric transit systems. It is a problem for sure. But the automated REM network would have gone to Pointe de Tremble. And I really would have hoped that would have been the project that we had seen. Unfortunately, because of just sort of public outcry over the proposed elevated sections within downtown Montreal, that was sort of an eyesore for many. And also, if they tried to put it underground, it would have also been multiple costs prohibitive than having it at grade or above grade. And also, Montreal's an old city. You have a century-old sewer system that we have to deal with in order to move. And a lot of people don't realize that the reason transit projects cost so much sometimes is because utility relocation is actually really, really cost prohibitive and expensive. And so we're getting this tramway project, which I'm excited about, but also at the same time, it's slightly inferior to what the other project would have been. But I am happy to see some rapid transit for our friends in the eastern Montreal.
Where do you stand on when you do a public transit project and you go above ground? And for like the REM, people are complaining about those big concrete pillars. That some would say it's a blight to see that. And I've seen in other cities where those big concrete pillars that support the light rail end up, just a target for graffiti, and they look disgusting, that kind of thing. Where do you stand on that if you got to make a project and how it fits into the urban landscape?
Yeah, well, I think it totally depends. I mean, the part of the elevated REM in the south is not really a problem because it runs in between an elevated highway. Yeah. So you don't really see it, right? And I don't think a lot of people complain about the elevated highway more than they do the elevated REM project. But it is one of those things where you do have to either figure out some sort of beautification around it as kind of a negotiation tactic to get it done. But a lot of times, even as we see it now, people still would rather have the tramway than meaning something that more elevated and automated. I mean, one of the biggest costs, operating costs to transit and transit system, about 70% of it comes from labor, right? And so the REM project being automated, like it is in Vancouver and whatnot. And now the thing, you're able to run a lot of service for very cheap and you don't have to deal with labor. And all you have to do is deal with electricity costs, right? Instead of like labor costs. And so there is a big difference here. And so with this tramway project, we're now adding two things that I somewhat caution. One, you're adding labor, which is sometimes tough, especially in America. Our stupid, needless, pointless war that we're having between each other economically at the moment, and I won't comment more about that. But you are dealing with labor shortages that we did see during the pandemic, especially around bus drivers in North America. So when you're adding in a labor issue, it's not as great given you could have the automated technology. And then the second thing is how many, there's 32 kilometers. How many intersections is the tram going to have to wait at? And so when you add that at grade issue, it starts to make the project a little less exciting than it would have been if it were fully at grade, and I mean above grade, and not within a conflict. I'm sure some of your listeners who've been to Toronto will know that all of the streetcars are very heavily trafficked, but they get stuck behind other cars all the time. And a streetcar full of 200 people waiting behind a car of 3 people is the most frustrating thing you'll ever see.
I remember going to a Blue Jays game once in Toronto, and we took those streetcars, and I'm on this thing, and I'm like, I could walk faster. I mean, I could walk faster than this. So why is this an option?
Totally.
So totally been there. Let me ask you on the cost, right? Because listen, a lot of stops, 31 stations, 38 kilometers, but the cost here, 18 billion Canadian, about 12.5 billion USD. Is that a reasonable cost for a project like this?
Reasonable relative to North America, yes. Unfortunately, Canada and America have some of the highest transit costs in the world, bar none. It's just we don't know how to build transit. We don't have enough transit in order to build an industry and have the brain drain in this country in order to have this chicken or egg situation where, once you're the expert, then you can keep building it and it gets cheaper at scale. And unfortunately, we just don't build enough transit in this country to have an industry and an educational backbone in our higher institutions to teach about best practices around transit. And so therefore, we kind of find this chicken or the egg situation. And that's the hard part, because you're correct. If we had Spain's, Spain can build a project for $100 million, $160 million a mile underground. And so that's far cheaper than what this project would be per kilometer, right? And so you're like, how does that work? And so when you get cheaper transit costs and we're able to build things cheaper and quicker, the math pencils out a lot more, right? So, instead of being like, well, it's elevated, well, we'll put it underground because we can afford to do that and we know how to do that. The equation really changes, right? So that's what we're really struggling with, and hopefully slowly starting to address. But it's been a long time coming, unfortunately. And it's not just transit. We really don't know how to build anything in North America. It's infrastructure.
It's unbelievable. Let me just wrap up quickly with you on this, Hayden. This tramway, it's going to connect to the metro. So you won't be able to go from the eastern tip of the island directly into downtown. You will have to do a switch over to the metro. We know the Green Line in Montreal is already packed with people. What about that? Could we possibly be creating more headaches for our current metro system since it doesn't go all the way through to downtown?
You could. I think it just then goes to show that we need to expand more transit within Montreal quicker, right? Because you're making a perfect point. And if we were talking about roads, we would then say, well, we have to add capacity to those other roads in order to facilitate this road project. And so it really just brings up the point that we need to complete the package of the transit packages that are already on the books for Montreal, especially with REM expansion and other capacity improvements, as well as the Expo line and all of that fun stuff. Because I 100% agree with you. It will be an issue, and we need to address it. And it's a good problem to have.
That's
it's
true.
It's a good problem to have, where too many people are in the trains and there are less headlights in front of you while you're driving to Montreal every day.
Hayden, listen, I'll tell all our listeners to seek you out, the Transit Guy, on so many of the social networks. I think you're a must follow on X. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Have a great day. Thanks, Elias.
Hayden Clarkin, transport engineer and public transit advocate.